Bro. What? Do you want to come here? Why? All right, treats it is. Croeso friends, welcome back to Opus L&I, where we try to believe the small lies so we can practice believing the big ones. It's December, and I'm not entirely sure how that happened, but December means Hogswatch, and that means that I get to spend 3 whole hours with one of my very favorite characters, Sto Helit. And for all of you who are very confused about what I just said, not to worry. I'm referring to a book by the late great Sir Terry Pratchett, yes, the same person who upon being knighted went out and forged himself a sword out of meteorite iron. He was a badass. Called Hogfather. The book takes place in the satirical setting of Discworld and details an attempt to kill off the Santa analog, known as the Hogfather, in order to tip the scales of the universe more firmly towards logic and away from fantasy. When the Hogfather disappears, Death, yes, that Death, takes his place, while Death's granddaughter, yes, he has a granddaughter, Susan Sto Helit investigates, and wacky hijinks ensue. The book was made into an absolutely fantastic 2-part miniseries in 2006, in which Susan is played by Michelle Dockery, whom you may remember as Lady Mary from Downton Abbey. Susan is a favorite character of mine, on the page and on the screen, and when my friend Lena, of Lena Prepec Patterns, link to her channel in the cards and the description, asked me to be one of the pattern testers for her new Edwardian shirtwaist pattern, I knew it was a chance to make something that Susan would wear. So, everyone, go grab your cuppa. Today I am drinking The Shroud by Corpse Coffee, a delightfully nerdy coffee company with its own webcomic. It is a wonderfully delicate white tea flavored with pear and almond. And as always, tell me what you're drinking in the comments, and if you have a favorite comic, web or otherwise. Currently, I'm immersed in The Wicked and the Divine. It's beautiful. Let's get into it. First things first, Lena sent me the pattern in my size. It's got my name on it and everything. And I printed it out and made sure that it tiled correctly, which it did. And I know I already sang the praises of this tape in my coming out London Hood video, but I will do it again. It is so fantastic. Once I had the pieces all cut out, I combed through my stash to find some fabric that was appropriate. I found some linen or linen blend fabric in a bright white that is just a bit too stark for medieval use, but works fine for post-industrial clothing. And it matches the optic white crochet cotton lace I have. I chose to use my rotary cutter for this project since I'm cutting out pattern pieces that aren't just shapes TM and are small enough to fit on my giant cutting mat. It worked out really well, actually. I'll probably continue to use this technique on smaller pattern pieces going forward. Sewing 1 million little pin tucks was not fun, but the effect is so lovely that I don't even really care. Using the friction pens to mark out where all the tucks went was the best decision I've made in a while. Next up, sewing on the lace. I've only ever seen lace insertion projects where you have a singular whole pattern piece of fabric, and then you sew the lace onto that where you want it, and then you cut the fabric in the middle of where the lace is and press those seam allowances to the outside. This pattern has the shirt and yoke cut separately and sewn onto the lace on either side, which was a little fiddly, but worked out fine in the end. I did sew the lace to the fabric by hand on the first pass, including tacking down the mitered corners, just for increased precision. The edges of the fabric are pinned back, pressed, and then I zigzagged over the join on my machine to reinforce the seam. Then the excess fabric is cut away and the insertion is all finished. The shirtwaist buttons all the way down the back, which is accurate for the Edwardian period, but kind of a pain. I found myself just unbuttoning the top 2 or 3 buttons and pulling it over my head. After the button placket comes the body assembly and then hemming. It was odd to hem something before finishing everything else, but I guess it makes sense. I forgot to get footage of it, but I finished the raw seam allowances with a zigzag stitch, and I attached the collar somewhere in there too. The waist of the blouse is drawn tight by means of a drawstring inserted into a casing sewn to the inside of the shirt. I used my bias tape maker to fold in the edges and then sewed a buttonhole into the middle for the drawstring to be cinched and tied. Next up, sleeves. The blouse comes with 2 different sleeve treatments, a 3/4 length puffed sleeve with a simple cuff and a full bishop sleeve with nearly elbow length buttoned gauntlet cuffs. You can guess which one I went for, right? Right? Each ridiculous gauntlet cuff is comprised of 2 pieces of fabric and lining each in order to get a properly tight fit. So first I had to sew the 4 sets of cuffs together along one side, and then sew the fashion and lining pieces together before clipping the corners, turning them right side out, and pressing. Then, for the poofy part of the sleeve, I first needed to make the little placket to make sure I could get the sleeve on. I actually probably didn't need to do this part. The top of the gauntlet cuff is big enough for me to slip over my wrist, but when I pattern test something, I followed the directions very faithfully. After that, I needed to mark the sewing and guidelines so that I could gather the sleeve head and cuff piece. Once those are properly gathered and pinned to their respective pieces, I can sew them down and remove the gathering stitches. Stick around after this brief commercial break for the finishing touches. I used my buttonhole chisel to open up the buttonholes, and then I marked where each button needed to be sewn on. Sewing buttons is my least favorite part. It's so tedious, but it usually means I'm nearly finished. For the sleeve cuff closures, the pattern called for thread loops instead of buttonholes. I actually enjoy making these. Using pearl cotton, I made 2 loops of thread and did blanket stitches around the loops, alternating directions to make sure that the stitches don't spiral around the loops like a friendship bracelet. When I get to the end, I tie a small knot and bury the thread in the seam, and then I'm finished. Humans need fantasy to be human, to be the place where the falling angel meets the rising ape. You have to start out learning to believe the little lies so you can believe the big ones. Justice, mercy, duty, that sort of thing. Take the universe and grind it down to the finest powder and sieve it through the finest sieve, and then show me one atom of justice, one molecule of mercy. And yet you act as if there is some ideal order in the world, as if there is some rightness in the universe by which it may be judged. People have got to believe that, or what's the point? You need to believe in things that aren't true, or else how can they become? Thank you for joining me today, friends, and sticking around until the very end. Thank you also to Lena for trusting me to be a pattern tester. Working with you was amazing, and I can't wait for your book to come out so I can hype it to everyone I know who does Edwardian. Thank you also to everyone who left suggestions or told me their preferences on my last video. I value each and every vote and suggestion, and I am going to do something completely different. I had the idea, since it will be my last 2021 video, to do a year in review instead, just talking about the things I made this year and maybe some plans I have for 2022. Also, there will be a fun announcement of the Ko-fi Patreon variety, so if you're interested in that, be sure to catch the Christmas Eve video. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I upload every other Friday, even on Christmas Eve. And if you're someone who enjoys reminders, hit the notification bell to turn those on. Yeah? If you want to find me on other social media, I am at Opus LNI everywhere, and I will put the links in the description box below, along with a link to my Ko-fi, where I post exclusive donor content and I have my web shop. Until next time, be kind, do the work, continue supporting marginalized people, and keep creating. Will.